right. Okay. So welcome to today's Mini Monday. Our Mini Mondays are about elevating your health with a sip of data-driven natural solutions. And I thank you all for being here today. Today, we are going to be talking about more than calories, how nutrition affects the scale. And just a little disclaimer here, right? This presentation does not constitute medical advice. It is intended for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Do not ignore professional medical advice or seeking treatment because of information contained in this presentation. And of course, if you think you may have a medical emergency, immediately call your doctor or dial 911. All right. So today, the intention of our conversation is that you are present, firstly, to what your health makes available for you and your life. Two, you understand the three primary ways nutrition affects your weight. Three, you leave with data-driven strategies to reduce hunger and promote satiety, the feeling of being full, like you've been fed. Four, you understand one of the often missing essentials of accessing a future of sustained and empowered weight loss. And I wouldn't even really say often missing, it's almost like an always missing essential if this is an area that you tend to struggle with or have struggled with for a while. Number five, we'll talk about can supplements help? And then at the very end, we will talk about being guided and living well empowered. So if you're interested in learning more about working together, we'll talk about that briefly at the very end of our time together today. So the first thing I invite you to consider is, what does your health make available? And the reason why we're looking at this question is when we encounter information, we see it through a lens of our perspective. And my real belief is that our health and vitality is foundational to authoring our lives. And so my invitation is to really relate to this information from that perspective today. Right. So rather than conversations of good or bad or right or wrong that often crop up around food and nutrition and weight and body, we want to set those aside. They're not very effective, newsflash. And what we really want to be connected to is what your health and vitality is for. So I'm just going to be silent for a few moments and give you each and all an opportunity to answer for yourself, why is elevating and preserving your health and vitality important to you? Okay, great. And this is what this work is all about. My mission at Well Empowered, like mission with a capital M, not about marketing, but truly what this work is for people bringing their gift fully to the world and inspiring others to do the same. So a little quiz for y'all, nutrition through the ages, right? There have been so many theories, fads, etc., over the course of years and decades. One little quiz for you is true or false. Is it true or false? If no fat touches my lips, no fat touches my hips. It's false, right? And most of you probably know that by now, but I will tell you, when I was growing up, right, in my late teens and early 20s, this was considered true, right? This was considered true. And oh my goodness, I shudder to think of the impacts of this. I really lived by these words for many, many years and decades. And I have to tell you, it didn't work. It didn't work. It left me hungry. It left me, with more calories in my body than optimal because I was always hungry. And it left me not feeling great in my body because I was a weight that was higher than is optimal for my body, given by the fact that I was so darn hungry all the time because there was no fat in my diet. So hopefully none of you are surprised to know that the answer to this question is false. So moving on to how our food nutrition does actually affect our weight, right? Nutrition being foods and beverages. We'll go into each of these a little more deeply, but the number one way, the first way, not the number one way, but the first way is through calories. So calories do play a role in how our foods and beverages affect our weight. Number two is the hormonal impact of our foods and beverages on our weight. And number three is the inflammatory load. So to talk about each of these in a little bit greater detail today, the first one is around calories, right? There's a conversation that has been passed down that says something like calories in versus calories out. That is how you lose weight. And this has actually been proven to be false, right? Through scientific research, it has been proven to be false, that it is not strictly a matter of calories in versus calories out, but it's not totally irrelevant either. In other words, calories do play a role in our weight. They are just not the only thing that matters, but calories do play a role. They're not the only thing that matters. So if not only calories, then what? Well, number two, we have the hormonal impact of food. And what we eat and drink and how much we eat and drink affects our hormones. And hormones play an important role in our satiety, whether we feel like we've been fed or not, and whether we burn fuel or store fuel. In other words, someone might say it, whether we burn fat or store fat, right? But whether our metabolism is amped up and running at its optimal levels, or whether it's slowed down to a snail pace and conserving fuel. So how our food affects our hormones does play a really important role in this. And, as you can see here, these are some of the hormones that play a role that affect our satiety and whether we burn fuel or store fuel. Number one, we have insulin. Insulin is the hormone we produce from our pancreas that in response in particular to carbohydrates. And when we produce insulin, it sends a message to our body that we have been fed. And with that message comes a cue to store fuel. So when we produce lots of insulin, we store fuel. So it's all about the sweet spot amount, right? We want to be producing the optimal amount of insulin, and we want our cells to be getting the message well and be dancing in that sweet spot. Number two is a hormone called glucagon. And glucagon is something you may be familiar with, but maybe not by its name. Some of you may have heard these new drugs like Wegovy or Ozempic. These are examples of GLP-1 agonists, and basically they're mimicking the function of glucagon. And glucagon helps our body go into fat burning mode, like burning fuel mode. So these GLP agonists play a role in that. And so we can also eat in a way that optimizes our production of glucagon, optimizes the sensitivity, in other words, our body's ability to hear the message of glucagon. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit here. But glucagon is our second hormone affecting whether we burn fuel or store fuel. It also plays a role in our satiety. It does promote a sense of being full or fed. So that's another great benefit of glucagon. Then we have this hormone called ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone. So ghrelin is a hunger hormone, and we can fuel our body in a way such that we improve the sensitivity. We reduce the production of ghrelin. We're less hungry. Leptin is a satiety hormone. So it tells our brain that we've been fed and there are things we can do to leverage our optimal production of that. And then also our body's ability to hear that message. So with any hormone, we need to produce it and we need to receive the message. So it's a bit like a ball and a mitt. We need both of those working well. And then we have this hormone called cholecystokinin, CCK, and this is important also for satiety. This is actually cued by our consumption of fat, which is one of the many reasons that fat-free diet of the 90s was so bad for us, right? We were never feeling full because we were never producing cholecystokinin. So lots more, a lot of other things going on with that, but that was one of the key points. And then also our production of cortisol. Cortisol is our primary stress hormone, and it's a little bit like a Goldilocks hormone. We don't want it too high or too low. We want it in that sweet spot range. And when cortisol is out of whack, we're going to be storing fuel more readily. So being mindful of how we care for our bodies so that we can be in that sweet spot cortisol production. And here we have a lovely image of the blood sugar roller coaster. And this blood sugar roller coaster is brought to you by the interplay between what you eat and drink and your hormones, right? So most notably are the blood sugar roller coaster. The hormone that plays a central role in this is our insulin, and also I would say our cortisol. So what happens when we consume a high sugar food or a high starch food, which essentially is plant-based sugar, has the same impact on our body as sugar. Our blood sugar goes up really, really quickly. Our body does not like that. So our body produces insulin. Insulin's job is to lower the blood sugar. It walks, so to speak, up to, metaphorically speaking, up to the molecules of sugar, grabs those sugar molecules by their sticky hands, escorts them over to a cell wall, knocks on the cell, and the cell absorbs the sugar if everything is working well. And what happens when we spike our blood sugar, we also end up spiking our insulin because, again, our body does not like it when our blood sugar is super high. So spike in blood sugar equals spike in insulin. And then we get this plummet. We go down that roller coaster, big hill down, and our blood sugar is too low. Our body also doesn't like that. So then we produce cortisol, which helps our body release stored glucose from our liver to help bring our blood sugar back up. And oftentimes that's going to bring it back up higher than we want it. And then we just keep on this blood sugar roller coaster. Another thing that happens is, when our blood sugar spikes and our insulin spikes and then our blood sugar drops, when it drops, we're hungry, we're cranky, we have increased challenges focusing. If it's in the middle of the night, you're going to have increased challenges sleeping. So these are just some of the impacts of spiking that blood sugar and insulin. And then thirdly, we have the inflammatory impact of food. So when inflammation is chronically elevated, your body goes into fuel conservation mode, AKA fat storage mode. This was actually central to my final paper when I was getting my Master's of Science in Nutrition and Functional Medicine. It is so interesting, all of the things that happen when inflammation is chronically elevated as it pertains to our metabolism and fuel conservation. But this has really evolved to benefit us, right? We can thank our ancestors for this because it's one of the biological reasons we are here. And to say a little bit more about this, inflammation is intended to support the healing process, short-term inflammation. And so in terms of our hair, if we look back hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, inflammation, really played a central role in keeping us alive, whether it was given by an infection or an injury. That inflammation plays an important role in supporting the healing process. And imagine someone who, hundreds of years ago had broken their leg and needed to be able to sustain, live for longer with less calories because it was more challenging to go about and find more food. This inflammation was one of the things that made it possible. Same thing with a famine, right? In those kind of times, the body will go more into fuel conservation mode and kind of hence the thrifty genes, slightly different mechanism there. But anyway, it's just really, useful to see that this inflammatory response in the short term is useful for our body. But really what I'm talking about here is chronic inflammation, right? So rather than short-term inflammation that we would expect when someone gets sick or there's an injury, we would expect short-term inflammation to support the healing process. But it's that sustained chronic inflammation that really is a problem and puts our body into fuel conservation or fat storage mode. So, is inflammation playing a role for you? Is it at play for you? My encouragement is to test, don't guess. And when I work with people, we gather a lot of data. That's why I call it data-driven natural medicine, right? And these are examples of different tests that might be relevant for you. I'm not saying they all would be relevant for you, but one is called HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. The next one is called homocysteine. I will tell you out of the gate, these top two are the two I most commonly run on people to assess inflammatory load, baseline inflammation, whether it's chronically elevated or not. Then we have this third one, ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate. That's usually more indicative of short-term inflammation. I'm less likely to run that on a regular basis. And then we have this last one, this LPPLA2. This one is more specific to inflammation in the cardiovascular system. So as it pertains to heart health. But, again, in service of taking a targeted approach and understanding if inflammation is at play for you, this is how you want to assess it. Some people think that they would have symptoms of inflammation, but it's often not true. Oftentimes, people have no symptoms of inflammation other than they're struggling to lose weight. Sometimes people have symptoms of inflammation that they just don't connect with inflammation, such as increased fatigue or digestive distress. Certainly, inflammation can show up as chronic aches and pains, but it's just not always the case. And again, I can't tell you how often I test these numbers and find them elevated in someone who doesn't really have any symptoms. So I really encourage you to get these numbers and know them. And then we have data-driven strategies. So talking a little bit about nutritional strategies to reduce hunger and promote satiety. So we want to help your hormones work better, help you feel better. And the number one recommendation we'll start with here, and these aren't necessarily in the format of, first favorite, best versus to number one, number five in the way of priority. These are just different suggestions. And these are just some different suggestions. There are a lot of different ways we can leverage how we're caring for our body to reduce hunger and promote satiety. But the first one we have is start with stability. And what I really mean by that is starting your day by fueling your body such that your blood sugar list remains stable. And there are things that help this and there are things that hurt this. So what helps is making sure you have sufficient protein and some fat. So that's going to really help stabilize your blood sugar. Fiber can also play an important role in this as well. What's going to hurt with blood sugar stability is sugar or simple carbs, right? Whether it's bread or a bagel or a muffin, all of those things are really going to set you up metabolically to be on that blood sugar roller coaster. And we do not want that. So to keep your body nice and stable, I really encourage you starting your day with a meal that stabilizes your blood sugar, gets you started with that foundation. Number two is increase satiety with some fat, right? So some fat. So fat is one of three macronutrients. As you may know, protein, fat, and carbs are macronutrients. And as I said earlier, fat plays an important role in our production of cholecystokinin, that satiety hormone. Now, also beyond that, it does help with keeping our blood sugar levels stable as it pertains to insulin. So, a few different points of leverage here. And the thing is, fat is very useful, but we do want to be mindful of total quantity because fats, while super useful for a lot of things, are high in calories. And if we think about these different macronutrients, what we find is that protein and carbohydrates, per 1 gram of protein or 1 gram of carbohydrate, you get 4 grams. You get 4 calories. So 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of carbohydrate, each one of those equals 4 calories. Now, with fat, 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. So, this is really acknowledging that yes, calories do play a role. They're not the whole story, but they do play a role. So, we do want some fat, but we want to be mindful, make sure it's the right amount for you and your body. Number 3, fiber up to feel full. So fiber promotes satiety in a few different ways. And one of the ways fiber promotes satiety is it actually expands our stomach. So when we ingest fiber, it causes our stomach to stretch in a unique and a more notable way. And that stretch of our stomach is actually ends up cueing this message to the brain to start communicating that we've been fed. So that's one awesome point of leverage. Fiber will also play a role in our production of insulin, keeping it nice and stable rather than spiking it. Fiber also plays a role in fostering a healthy microbiome, and our microbiome plays such an important role in weight optimization. So there are great studies that show our microbiome can either support our metabolism or hinder it. More on that at a later date, but some really cool information on that out there. Number 4, we have protein-powered insulin stability. So definitely protein also can be really helpful in keeping our blood sugar levels stable and promoting a sense of satiety or the feeling that we've been fed. And then number 5, sleep, right? So when our sleep is off, we are going to have less metabolic flexibility. In other words, our hormones are not going to respond as well. We're more likely to have elevated blood sugar. Definitely has been shown. We're also more likely to have cravings through a few different mechanisms. One is through the hormones, but also simply given by a confusion of needs, right? So when we're tired, we're more likely to mistake I need energy in the form of sleep, right? That's the truth. I need energy in the form of sleep as I need energy in the form of fuel. So this case of mistaken identity, so to speak, will drive hunger and interfere with, will probably cause us to reach for simple carbohydrates like sugar, fast fuel, simple carbs, white rice, sugary things, stuff like that. Which is going to further put us on the blood sugar roller coaster. So a number of different points of leverage there with that sleep. And then we have accessing a future of empowered and sustained weight loss mastery, right? So starting to speak to, okay, what can we do beyond some of the things we've already talked about to author a future that you really do consistently feel your best, look your best, so you can be your best. And to me, this really starts with a simple truth. And that truth is you don't buy what you do, you buy why you do it, right? And if the scale was sufficiently motivating to lose weight, you would already have this area of your life handled. And the truth is, it's just not. But, my invitation is start to look at really, why is mastering this area of your life important to you? Why is mastering your health and your relationship with your body and food? Why is it important for you? And so I'm going to invite you to complete this exercise. We're not going to do this together today, but I do invite you to make notes of these prompts and actually do this exercise after today's Mini Monday, right? So first, you're going to stand in the 5-year future. So currently 2023, welcome to 2028. In 2028, I'll be 51. How about you? Okay, so 5-year future. Envision your relationship with your body, food, and your weight as you desire and intend they be. Okay, so just quiet your mind, ground yourself in this beautiful 5-year future. And then start to tell this beautiful story of you and your life in first person present tense. What is it to walk around in this 5-year future feeling great in your body, right? Feeling at peace and ease with food in your body, the scale, all those things. So I really invite you to put pen to paper or fingers to keypad and tell the story. And then stay connected to it. Now moving on to, can supplements help? Yes, but one, they do not work alone. Two, the ideal supplements for you and your body are based on data on you, labs about you. And so to give you a quick look at all the different options out there for supplements and their role in weight optimization, right? Around promoting satiety, we have replenishing nutrients. There are a lot of different nutrient deficiencies or insufficiencies that can play a role in hunger. We have our omega-3 fatty acids. We have fiber, just to name a few. Then around insulin sensitivity, again, we see replenished nutrients. Berberine is a superstar around insulin sensitivity, but only if your body needs it. We don't want to use it if your body doesn't need it, because that can produce an outcome of hypoglycemia, which is not good or pleasant. Then we have our omega-3s, chromium, curcumin, myo-inositol, just to name a few. Around natural GLP-1 agonists, right? So those GLP-1 agonists, those are things like the Wegovy and Ozempic. Natural GLP-1 agonists include EGCG, which is found in green tea. Curcumin, a very specific form of curcumin, is what I recommend for its absorbability. It's called Meriva. Curcumin, by the way, as you may know, is the active ingredient in turmeric. Then we have resveratrol, soy, and cinnamon. In the way of reducing inflammation, some things that I reach for on a regular basis include curcumin, again, that Meriva, and we want to use it in a very specific dose and frequency. In other words, how many times throughout the day, based on inflammation. So again, being very specific with the use of this. Omega-3s, same thing. We want to measure your omegas and make sure you even need them, right? Is that what's at the source of elevated inflammation or not? It may not be. And then we have these things called SPM, which help your body break the vicious circle of inflammation. Number 4, we have support. Oh, sorry, my numbers are off here. That should be number 5. Support sleep, right? Different options for supporting sleep: magnesium, melatonin. Sometimes we use immediate release, and sometimes we use sustained release. We have CBD. I encourage, when appropriate for people, full spectrum CBD. Lots of different great options out there. Equilibria is one of the companies that I encourage people to check out on that CBD front. Then we have L-theanine, phosphatidylserine, glycine. So all of these could be relevant for you. It's really a matter of figuring out what's right for you and your body. And again, the best approach is one that is data-driven. And then we have, lastly here, supporting a healthy stress response, healthy adrenal function through replenishing nutrients, supporting sleep, perhaps adaptogenic herbs. And again, we see that CBD as a nice option there too. So I invite you to take 3 powerful actions today. First and foremost, answer the question, what is one new action you are willing to take today that will move you one step towards your intended 5-year future? So I do invite you to write that down right now. It doesn't need to be heroic, right? It could be, add some lentils to my dinner. It could be make sure I get to bed at 10:30 p.m. or shut off my electronics at 10 p.m. It could be drinking a cup of green tea, right? It could be having fish to get those omega-3s, right? So lots of different places you could start with this. Number two, I invite you to play a better game, right? I am such a champion for people ditching the broken all or nothing approach and stepping into mastering your middle ground. So, what would it look like for you to play a better game and give up the old, broken, inherited conversation around all or nothing and playing a perfect game? Play a better game. I invite you to do that. And then number three, cultivate a practice of being kind and honest. These two, often in this area of weight loss mastery, do not coexist. And I promise you can cultivate this as a practice. And especially it becomes more accessible when you're really present to what this is all for. You feeling your best and, looking your best so you can be your best. So, ditching that old approach and really stepping into information, inspiration, strategy. This is how we progress in this journey of weight loss mastery. So, for any of you who I'm not working with, if you're interested in looking at working together, I invite you to schedule your complimentary 30-minute consultation by texting 312-967-8000, emailing my awesome assistant, Erin, at we@wellempowered.com, or you can go to the website. Our website is wellempowered.com. You can schedule your complimentary consultation there, virtual, Zoom. It would be a real pleasure to look at working together. And then if it's appropriate, from there, we would move on to completing your health audit. This is 2 90-minute sessions conducted remotely. I think of these like discovery and solution. So we would discuss that in greater detail at your complimentary consultation. And then, please, if you're not already, please feel free to follow me on social media to remain connected. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm not so much on Twitter, to be quite honest, but on Instagram at Well Empowered, Facebook at You Well Empowered, and LinkedIn, Jessica Haymeyer. So I really thank you each and all for being here today and for doing this work. To me, this is what it's all about. When your health is handled, you bring fully to this world what only you can. And that is a gift not to be missed. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.